Welcome to The High Ground, a Doof bonus content show where we're opening the book on the Mummy franchise. No second takes. I'm your unattractive librarian in glasses host, Reuben Morehouse.
And I'm your wimpy brother host, Elliot Diebold.
And I'm the carnivorous beetle eating your brain host, Georgia Diebold.
And as you may have guessed from that, we're here to talk about the best movie called The Mummy that doesn't feature a mummy, The Mummy, from 1999.
Unattractive librarian in glasses host. Who the hell are you talking about there? Because
Georgia,
Rachel Weisz is gorgeous.
No, Georgia, she has
Rachel Weisz is
glasses on.
attractive because she has glasses and is a librarian.
She is an
So
English
she's clearly
rose, excuse me.
No, of course.
Yeah,
I
this
just
is
thought it
one
was-
of the shittiest attempts ever at the like.
Because if she's unattractive, then I am actually a beetle.
Well, yeah, but if you aspire to Rachel Weisz and we have to aspire to Brendan Fraser and we'll all fall short.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, legitimately. Okay, so jumping the gun here a bit, but this movie is from 1999 and my overarching thesis is, boy, can you feel it sometimes.
I'd never looked at it with a critical eye of any kind before. It's one of those ones, you watch it as a kid, and I was just sort of watching it. Yeah, like I couldn't help but notice that like there weren't a lot of characters of color for a film set in Egypt, and the ones that were there weren't great.
The worst is how like two of the main characters, Rachel Weisz and what's his name? Her brother. I can't remember the actor's name.
Yeah, John Hannah.
Yeah, that's the one. So they're supposed to be half Egyptian. I was like, they're incredibly white.
They're
She
so
says that
white.
her father was an adventurer and that he loved Egypt so much that he fell in love with their mother who was Egyptian.
Oh.
And
So is
every
she
time I watch the
actually-
film, I think she's so fucking white. Like
Yeah,
you
clearly
cannot
not.
expect me to believe that.
Is she actually descended from Anux and Amun? Is that-
She's not, but
No.
stay tuned for the second film. Like, keep that thought in mind
Yeah.
as we head into
Right.
film 2.
But yeah, no, it's a bit of a dated movie. I mean, like, it's interesting. There's some parts of it that are dated in ways that I can't get behind, like how they keep talking about one of the main characters, a Middle Eastern character, and how smelly he is, and I'm just kind of like,
Yeah.
didn't like that. But then also
Yeah.
sometimes it's dated in ways that are more fun, like when they've got scarabs that act like piranhas, and you just kind of roll with it.
Oh, and just like as problematic as it is, that like whole like safari explorer like aesthetic is just one I really like.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, this movie
Yeah,
was
the
begging
unlike.
to have Dwayne Johnson in it, and obviously they fixed that pretty soon
Yeah.
with one of the future ones.
Yeah, they're about to get on that. Yeah, but no, this is just. I'm really excited to actually do this episode with you, Reuben, because I've skimmed some of your notes, and you're like you coming at this movie from a place that I just can't, because I've watched it millions of times, like since I was a kid. I just don't have that ability to like step out of my nostalgia and kind of view it like objectively.
Yeah, I've seen this movie. I think I saw this movie once when I was younger, and like I gotta say, probably of all the movies we've watched for this show, this might be my least favorite so far.
That's insanity.
I know that that's a strong stance to take.
Speechless.
But I really feel like it was just like, it wasn't the worst movie we've watched for this show, but I felt like it was the one I enjoyed the least.
Because I'm coming at this from the perspective of like, aside from the problematic stuff, which I will mostly just attribute to this movie being old.
Yes.
I would call it like the pinnacle of the action genre. And like if I was ever tasked with making an action film, after I finished questioning who decided that I should be doing that, I'd get straight on like
You'd call
basically
Brendan
just
Fraser and
copying
do a
this
reboot.
film.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like-
I love this movie.
Yeah, like for me, this is just the blend of comedy, action, character work. The character work is admittedly simple but effective, is how I characterize it.
The
but
casting is really good,
yeah,
The
like
cast
this
is
is
except for the fact that it's very whitewashed. But apart from that, it's really good.
If somebody described a movie I made as a shallow imitation of the 1999 Mummy film, I would put that like in a plaque and hang it above my
That
bed.
would go on your tombstone.
Yeah, 100%.
The reboot with Tom Cruise could have had more of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I guess the other thing that I'll say about this movie is it really felt pretty colonialist at times, didn't it?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Our protagonists are grave robbers, and like I know, like it's an adventure film, and maybe that's par for the course somewhat, but it still just kind of got to me on this watch.
Yeah, it's the
I
same
don't
as
know.
watching Indiana Jones in the 2020s. You're sort of like, yeah.
That's
Well,
the
and
thing.
it's like you said, Elliot, it's like I love the aesthetic of that era, but yeah, it does definitely come with some like, uncomfortable
Yeah, like
history.
like the other example that jumps to my mind when I'm thinking of this aesthetic is not just Tarzan, but like the hunter from Jumanji. And it's like every example I can think of for this genre, I'm just like, yikers, that hasn't aged well. But also I really like the aesthetic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get what you mean for sure.
Like the costumes and stuff are just like cool.
And just the sense of adventure you get, like in this movie and all the other ones of that genre, like what I love is just that idea of exploring and being the first person in a place in thousands of years. We just need people to start making versions of that for the modern era.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've never watched any of the Indiana Jones films, I don't think. So I kind of feel like
you're not missing out on much.
Well, I don't know. Like I probably would put this in the same bucket of like I'm trying to think of like what's the most adventure movie that I've watched, and I really can't think of any that I'm.
Well, but having not watched any Indiana Jones, it's like if you've never watched Star Wars. It's like you don't even have to like it, but it's so iconic. You should probably see it.
Yes, that's true. And that's what this show is for, really. For exact those kinds of movies.
Add that to our list of potential options.
So anyway, let's get into the story, shall we, of the mummy. So he was sleeping with a mistress down in a palace in Thebes when some soldiers cursed him in one of those crushing scenes. What was he to do? Where was he to go? It was looking crummy. I'll take my accolades for that joke to my new apartment.
I've seen this movie many times and I have no idea what we're talking about.
Before, about 5 minutes before we sat down
it's
to
the
record,
intro to The Nanny, Georgia.
Oh, okay. I've not seen that, so that's where I'm lost.
Yeah, gosh.
Reuben messaged me on Facebook like 5 minutes before we started recording, and he was like, have either of you two seen The Natty? Because otherwise my jokes aren't going to work. And I was like, you just better hope the audience likes them.
Hopefully they will. That's for you, audience.
What is The Nanny? Is that a
show?
TV show?
It's a sitcom about a
nanny.
nanny.
The British lady.
No, that's Mary Poppins.
No. You're thinking of
No.
Nanny,
There's a show, a British show where there's like a lady who just goes around and tells kids how to be.
Oh yeah, that's
You're
Super
thinking
Nanny.
of
Super Nanny. That's what I'm thinking.
Can we start making Super Nanny jokes? Because that show fucking ruled.
What was it that I was watching that was making fucking Super Nanny references?
She's like a nanny.
recently?
It's like one of those like Frasier, like pre-Friends sitcoms.
Yes, it's a sitcom about a New York.
I think I think the actress who was the nanny was in Friends.
Oh,
for a
she
bit.
has a strong accent.
Yeah.
Yes,
No, you're
does.
thinking of Janice from Friends, who has a similar
I haven't
accent,
seen
but
Friends.
I
I
don't
don't
think
know.
that's the same.
No,
Sorry
it's
for
a
trying to
real-
speak your language.
It's a real fish out of water type thing where she's like, she goes and starts being a nanny for this like upper class family, but she's got a wild accent, and that's where a lot of the comedy comes from.
Yeah, and doesn't she sounds like Janice from Friends, right? Like
So I also haven't seen a lot of Friends, but she does sound like what you just that noise.
Janice is very funny. Oh my god, it's a good character.
Anyway, that's how he became the mummy. So I don't know.
I just okay. Just when we're talking about the opening for this movie, I just gotta say, like, I get goosebumps every time it starts. Like, the score is so epic, which is definitely the nostalgia talking. I'm willing to cop that, but like, I also just loved ancient Egypt as a kid. So like the big panning shots of like Cairo in ancient times, and like all these great looking like temples and statues. Just like
Thebes, but yeah,
I just love it.
Yeah, I actually hadn't like something I didn't really remember ever appreciating before was the scene where I think Imhotep was standing out on the balcony. It kind of showed like the old, temple or city or something. And that they had like all of the sort of like hieroglyphic things like painted and stuff. Like I'd never really appreciated that before, but I was like, oh, it's actually really, really quite cool and pretty well done given that it came out in the
and
90s.
the pyramids are smooth because they still had that outer layer of gold.
Yeah,
the
like there was
British
actually quite a lot of
stripped.
attention to
Yeah.
detail on the, and it was they talked about Thebes, not Cairo.
Yeah, you're right.
Historically.
Mm.
Come on, Elliot.
It's been so long
keep
now.
up.
I forgot.
It is a beautiful setting, isn't it? Like Egypt as a setting for these kind of movies. You can kind of tell why there was a bit of a cinematographic love affair with Egypt for a while there, because it is just delightful. It's captivating, really.
It's really fascinating. As you'll hear a lot about for the next film, I've been to Egypt and it's just amazing. Like it's really cool. Like it's cool in a way that nowhere else I've ever been is.
Yeah, I can imagine. So I don't know. I want to talk about this because the movie does this interesting thing here where we spend a solid amount of time with this scene where we actually kind of feel bad for Imhotep a bit, right? Although he does murder the pharaoh, so not too bad, but like a bit bad. And then,
I mean, the pharaoh owned Anaximandrite and like wouldn't allow other men to touch her. So like he was kind of an ass, but yeah,
of course. But also, I feel like Imhotep as what, the high priest or whatever, has probably not got such a squeaky clean record himself. Anyway, but like it's interesting because it kind of does make you feel a bit for these characters and kind of represents his motivation is love. Like the reason that he is doing what he does in this movie is because he wants to bring the love of his life, despite not having seen her for 400 years, back to life. Oh, it's not 400 years, whatever it is, right? But then he's just kind of an evil monster later. Like they spend all this time setting this up and then they don't really, I don't know, they don't give him enough humanity later on for it to really feel like it pays off.
I suppose after he's been like killed and cursed, I mean, is it really the old Imhotep or is this a cursed monster? Like, are they the same
I think
person?
That's fair.
Yeah.
I feel like they needed to pick a lane, really, is my complaint. Like,
yeah, no, I can see what Reuben's saying because
make him a monster.
Yeah,
because if they are just going to go,
devil's advocate, I think.
Yeah, this is one of those things where like I saw Reuben had written this and I'm like, I never thought about that before, but you're right, because especially with the second movie a bit in mind, maybe I view Imhotep as a much more well-rounded character, but you're right, he kind of comes out in this one and like, when he comes back to life, he's just evil, and it's like they don't really use the fact that he has a motivation and is very close to being the goody in like his story in the original. But then
he'll also do something like scream at somebody and eat their eyes, and I'm just kind of like, I feel like the movie doesn't quite reconcile those two kind of versions of a monster mummy together.
But I do, I mean, I really liked one of the things I always really liked about this movie is that I mean, I guess, even though they definitely simplify him into sort of a monster later, you really sympathize with the two of them have this tragic love story and they're so in love with each other that they just keep trying to resurrect each other. Like, it's sort of really like beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. It feels like it starts out as a bit of a love story and then never quite gets there, I suppose.
But at least it's not stereotypical. Like it's relatively original. Like for the villains to be like a tragic love story. It's not something that's really. I can't really think of another obvious example.
No, you're right.
Maybe
you can sort of headcanon it as like after going through the Hom Die, he was just like too mad to be chill anymore. But they don't really go through that. There's not that point where anybody reaches
like
the original Imhotep. Like Anaximandrite doesn't wake up and see what he's become and like kill herself or anything. Like, you could explore that sort of territory maybe.
Can we talk about the Hom Die, because it's ridiculous. So it's like I was saying to Elliot, I'm like, okay, so it's like they want to punish Imhotep or whatever, and so they could kill him like in any kind of normal fashion, which could involve a bit of torture. Or they can do this ritual, which is like extremely torturous, but it also gives him superpowers. Why would you do that? I don't understand.
Now, I think that the key here is that obviously the Egyptians did have a pretty strong set of mythology around the afterlife, right? So like, I feel like denial of entry to the afterlife is maybe one of the key things. They didn't quite hit it like that in the movie, but I do feel like
Yeah, okay. I like that.
key.
Again, they didn't really say that, but I really like that as a headcanon, actually.
Yeah.
That fixes that for me. Thank you.
I do also just like,
But-
because there's that moment where Evie later is like, I've never actually heard of the Homdai being performed. And it's like, well, you wouldn't. It turns him into a fucking world-killing monster.
It gives him super plague powers. Like, yeah. No, but
it's a stupid thing to do.
Like, you would have heard of it if it had been done.
I would have thought just not mummifying him, because wasn't like the process of mummification was like a huge part of getting to the ancient Egyptian afterlife. So just like, yeah, don't do that. Would have been one, but also that makes a boring story.
Bury him in the desert. Yeah, the end.
Also, I want to start the counter with noting that it's an Oxana Moon's death is we don't actually see her die. We see her get stabbed via her shadow. And if there's something this series loves doing, it's showing us someone getting killed, but we only see their shadows.
I actually really like that.
Yeah, it's cool.
I mean, it's like, I don't know if you guys, if this used to get talked about when you studied like Shakespeare at school, but how they would often use, obviously not necessarily that exact technique, but the idea that what you can sort of picture in your mind is sort of worse, or the idea of like not fully knowing exactly what happens in a death scene and those kinds of things is much more mysterious and often can work a lot better than actually showing something, but it's not all that believable or well done. So yeah. I don't know, like they did it a few times when Imhotep was like absorbing people and stuff, and it was quite cool. Like rather than doing some sort of shitty like CGI, just having like a shadow that sort of a man that sort of then just goes, like was.
I think it saved money. Good. And it also, I think it lets them get away with more gruesome deaths without getting like MA rating because of all the blood.
Yeah, I don't mind it personally. I actually quite like that.
Technique. But I don't know whether I like it just because the Mummy does it, and I really like the Mummy, or whether I think it's actually clever.
No, I like it in general. I always like, especially in plays and stuff, I much prefer like off-screen sort of deaths, which is more applicable to plays because it's hard. You don't have CGI, and so they're not believable.
Okay, so just went on a bit of a wiki dive. Apologies, y'all. But I was thinking to myself, when we were talking about how it felt like there were two different visions of the Mummy and some kind of different parts, I was like, okay, maybe this is a scripting rewrite thing. Like there was two different versions of this film that they put together. And I went through the wiki, and this movie was in production for like 10 years before it eventually got off the ground. They were like, it was originally kind of created as a horror film, then was kind of redone as more of a like zombie style horror film by George Romero, which is kind of wild. And then it was kind of redone as a bit of a romance between an archaeologist that accidentally awakens a mummy and kind of has flashbacks to her past life as a priestess, which obviously kind of feels like it's persisted a little bit but changed. Then it's got rewritten like two more times before it finally came this version that's more of an adventure film. So I feel like that does kind of explain some of the things that jumped out to me about it, of like feeling like it was stepping halfway between a horror film and an adventure film and not quite getting it right. I don't know. It does contextually make it make more sense to me.
And maybe why like Imhotep and Anaxunamun have been sort of like almost characterized and then they sort of
exactly
stopped halfway a bit. Like maybe they were sort of going to be more like the main characters or something, flashing back rather than their own characters,
or more directly compared to Evie and Rick or something.
Because it does really feel like they get so close to making Imhotep actually a character and then just don't quite get there. Anyway,
still better than most villains get, but
true, definitely true. So anyway, we next get to another opening. We get another bit of an opening where we reset, we start again. Now we're in Egypt, get some beautiful shots in there, and now we see a mercenary Rick O'Connell and his men who basically just all get murdered. And I don't really know why this bit is here. I feel like this could have been completely cut and it would have made the film a bit better, to be honest.
Oh, it's a cool scene though. I actually really liked the action in the scene. It was better than I remembered. I was like, oh.
The action in this film
I was really into
is shot very well, isn't it? There's a lot of like the set where they're kind of men with guns hiding behind little half walls while the Magi charge at them and attack is like, it actually is quite fun. And we get another version of it later on. It's nice. Like, I do kind of like it, but completely unnecessary, this second opening.
Yeah, it's essentially just, I think, establishing Rick as a mercenary and a man of action.
And verifying he has been to Hummer.
Yeah, and he's in Hummer. That's true. If you just introduced him and he's like, yeah, no, I've been there, you'd be like, what?
Okay.
But I feel like that might work better. Like the bit of because there's this weird thing where we meet him later and then he's kind of freed. They free him and there's this whole thing. And then he shows up and he's clean shaven and Rachel Weisz
His
is
glow
like,
up.
oh.
Yeah,
he glows up. And Rachel Weisz is like,
that scene is so
oh,
funny.
actually, we might be actually onto something here. This might actually be legit. And I feel like if we as the audience had that same moment of like, oh, he's actually maybe not just a crazy person, I feel like that would have landed better.
Yeah,
you could have slotted
it
in as a flashback when he meets Benny on the ship too.
Yes, true.
Obviously, Benny was there.
The relationship with Benny is key to that, isn't it? I think that's the one thing that scene really does do, is set up Benny, who is one of the funniest characters in this.
He's so good.
He's so funny.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. And just to talk about that glow up scene while we're on the topic, because like Rachel Weisz also has like 2 or 3 of those. Like there's,
of course,
this movie is so funny with how just unashamedly it's like zooming in on their romance, or to be like, huh, Evie, yeah, she's all right, I guess. And then like the camera just pans and she's coming out in like, you know, this nice new dress or something, and like the music is just like applauding her for 20 seconds, and then they'll do the same thing with the Rick like 2 scenes later. It's like, okay, we fucking get it.
The romance is so heavy-handed. It's like just so not, I mean, it's not badly done like Star Wars, but it's just really heavy-handed. Like they're not being subtle or interesting at all. It's just like they're both hot and they like each other.
This movie isn't subtle, which is one of the things I like about it. It's a very straightforward film, but this is the bit where they maybe go like just a little too hard. I'm like, okay, guys, like for once we can pump the brakes just a little.
Yeah, agreed. Benny's such a turd. Such a good character. I love Benny.
Yes. So then we get a third and final opening to this movie where we meet Rachel Weisz, who is an unattractive librarian because she wears glasses.
Yep.
And then her drunk brother, John Hannah, who is wonderful and has found a map to an ancient treasure, which gets burned almost immediately. And I love this. I wrote in my notes when this happened, is he just incompetent or is this intentionally he's trying to prevent
and it is.
And that's funny because I said to Elliot, I was like, oh, I love that this seems really stupid, but then later you realize that he was actually in on it the whole time.
Which really does beg the question of like, how powerful are the Magi? Because they seem to have they seem to have this agent in some random museum, right? And then like
I think it's a premier museum in Cairo.
I think it's supposed to be like
Cairo? I thought it was like a British museum. I didn't realize they were already in Egypt.
No,
I thought they were in Cairo. Yeah.
Okay, that does make a bit more sense.
Or elsewhere in Egypt. I guess I just assumed it was Cairo, but
yeah, they keep bouncing between Cairo and Hamunaptra, I'm pretty sure. Like, it is still in Egypt, though. I'm almost certain.
I thought that being descended from an Egyptian, that they lived in Egypt, like the Evie and her brother, who have a surname, and I can't remember what it is.
Oh God, yeah,
Evelyn. No, I don't know.
But yeah, I guess okay. So to circle around to being a bit of a mummy apologist, you mentioned that we've got 3 openings here. I reckon you could argue that Rick, Evie, and Imhotep are the 3 main characters. So in a way, it almost makes sense that each of them get an opening scene and end of argument.
I don't know. By the time we were about 25 minutes into the movie and nothing had happened yet, I was kind of like, I'm ready for this movie to actually start. This movie is almost 2 hours long.
But it's also going chronologically because Imhotep is like, what, bajillion years ago or whatever. And then you've got Rick, and then 3 years later it's Evie.
I agree.
I feel like each one has stuff happen.
Actually makes a lot of sense. Except Elliot literally said, he's like, when it went to Rachel Weisz, and he's like, I hate this scene. And I was like, yeah, me too. It's Just
the
really
library. It's always just been the library bit. It's all ever since I was a little kid. It's just upset me that she damages all those books. I'm like, that's going to be so much cleaning. Like
which they never get around to, by the way. They
No.
never. I still don't know if she.
that
ever
other guy must
corrected
have done
that.
it while she was fucking jollying off to Humminoptera.
Yeah. Well, do you think she just had to spend like a whole sleepless night before she got on that boat? She's just like,
There's no way you
I
could get
have to
that done
clean.
in one
Picking
day.
up books. Yeah, no
She's
way.
very good at cataloging books, Elliot.
I know she's very. I don't care how good
She's
you are
the-
at cataloging
She's
books.
the only
It's 2
person
days
within
work.
1,000 miles who could handle that. She
Actually-
does it very well.
I really like that conversation though. Like I know we're mocking it right now because the book bit, but like the bit where he's like, "Why do I put up with you?" and then she gets to go, "Why do you put up with me?" It's because I can do that, and it's like it's such a like kind of natural way to just exposit all of her major character details. Like she just gets to go, "I can do this, and I can do it." Like because like Rick is the action hero. We get an intro to him in a fight because that's what he does. Evie, it's like, oh shit, how do we explain to people that she does reading and writing good? And I think the idea of having her like have to justify why he keeps her is actually a really good way
Well, it
to do
also
it.
shows that she's got a little bit of backbone as well. She's
Yeah.
not just like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like she's like, well, actually, I'm pretty useful.
And then also we get even more because then his response is, "No, I put up with you because your parents were great," which is like tells us more about her as
Even
well.
more exposition. And then when she has a conversation with her brother and she gets to talk about the Bainbridge scholars and how they rejected her application for the first of many times.
Fucking Bembridge scholars get a lot of rep in this movie.
They get mentioned
What is
so
Bainbridge?
surprisingly often.
Were they
I have
just
no
not allowed to
idea.
say Cambridge, do you think?
Yeah,
And they
I've
just
honestly never
changed
bothered
by
to look it
one
up.
letter? Is
Yeah, I
Bainbridge
feel
a
like it's
real
made
thing?
up, but I'm not sure about that.
Bainbridge. I'm looking it up now. Bainbridge College.
I mean, there is a place called
government-funded
Bembridge.
school in Victoria, Australia. So maybe that's what it is.
No, there is a place in the Isle of Wight called Bembridge.
I think it's like a
Bainbridge.
made up.
Yeah, and I think it's
It
just
does
meant to be
feel
Cambridge.
like Cambridge. Yeah.
Yeah. I just because they name drop it like at least 8 times throughout the movie.
It
Like
gets
if I
so
was
many
if I was
mentions.
going to do a drinking game of the Mummy, I'd drink every time she mentioned the Bembridge scholars.
She's obsessed with those Bainbridge scholars. But yeah, so then we meet John Hannah, her brother, who is kind of a drunk, failed Indiana Jones, and it's very fun.
He's probably the most fun character in this series. He's like the lovable goofus in a movie that honestly, I think you could apply that label to a majority of the characters, but him more so than any other is the lovable goofus.
You're going to hate me for this, but he's like a successful version of what they wanted Jar Jar Binks to be.
Yeah.
Don't you think? Like,
I
and you know
can
how
see
because he
that,
does
yeah.
the same kind of
That's a hot
slapstick,
take.
like when
I
he
like it.
will fumble into a room and accidentally knock somebody into a fire,
Yeah.
and and he does a lot of those
Yes,
kinds of things.
yes.
But it
You're so
actually
right.
really works.
I like that. I like that a lot.
That is a very
Yeah,
good one.
that's what they were trying
And
to do with Jar
he's
Jar, and it
pure
was
cowardly as well. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to see him team up with Benny. But yeah, I guess like because the other thing like with him as well is they do establish very early on the one thing he is very good at is pickpocketing,
Mm.
and I want that because like one of the big moments in the climax of the film that turns the whole thing around is that he pickpockets the key from Imhotep, and I remember as a kid
Yes.
thinking that's really stupid. But then, like, watching it again as a teenager and being like, no, this is literally the third time he's pickpocketed that exact thing off of someone in this film. Like,
But
Yeah.
also, you can underappreciate him. Like he is actually also an Egyptologist, although they clarify that his career's failed. But he can read Egyptian and speak Egyptian, and like he's not totally useless.
He's not as good as Evie,
He's
though,
not a
is he?
total
No.
fail for sure.
He needs Evie's help, but like he's not like Benny level useless.
no, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
He's too obsessed with the money. Like, that's the
Yeah. And again, he does care. Like he does care about Evie and stuff. He just also cares a lot about money.
I do
Good
love
on
that
him.
scene at the end where he's got the book and he's trying to read the inscription and he's like, I don't know what this symbol is, and he's trying to describe it while they're all getting attacked by mummies. It's so cool.
And
I love
she's
this
like,
movie.
oh, Menefis. And then he's like, oh, yes, I see. And they're all like getting stabbed. Yeah. It's a very good
I love
character.
this film so much.
The characters are very fun. We've got a lot of really fun characters.
So, yeah, they go to find Brendan Fraser, and he's about to be hung to death, and they save him by making a deal with a great, albeit slightly racist character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another very like fun character, but yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, this
Genuinely,
this would be
I think my favorite character is the warden. The
Mhm.
actor is so charismatic. Like,
yeah,
he's
he
so much
nails it.
fun. It's actually genuinely a wonderful performance.
Mm.
Yeah, but you're right. The character is sort of the epitome of the like, oh, this hasn't aged well aspect of the
No,
movie.
for
As
sure.
much as I love the warden, you could definitely like you'd want to rewrite him for a modern audience.
Yeah, no, I like that he's a sleazebag, but I wish that there weren't so many jokes where John Hannah says that he smells bad, which like, it's nothing. I mean, like, you can cut that out. Come on.
It was just like there was one, and it was they just really doubled down on it. Like it just kept coming back up, and it's like, why do they keep
Especially
doing
like
this?
because the character is intentionally like a sleazebag piece of shit. So it's just like there's so much better material to attack him with.
Yes.
Like there's
Yes,
great moments like the
for
one
sure.
where Rick is flicking the rope around and like intentionally like aiming it at him. That's funny because Rick hates him as a person.
And I just love when Evie turns around and she's like, "Oh no, what are you doing here?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm here to protect my vet." And they're just all like, "Oh, ew!" Like they just hate him. I think my favorite though was when and I was saying they're really good at doing this. They do it a few times in this movie where they have like just a little bit that just kind of tells you a bit about the character. Like there's just this one part where it just cuts to him emerging from a tent with like about 4 women just hitting him. And he's just going like, "Oh," and then he just sort of looks ashamed and walks off. It's like, what was he doing in there? He's just such a slime ball.
There's this one moment that I can't remember exactly what happens, but like Rachel Weisz and Brendan Fraser have some kind of like, lovers quarrel kind of vibe thing, and one of them storms off, and they kind of look at the warden as they go past, and he just kind of raises his hand like, "Oh, I don't know, like don't look at me."
It's when Rick gives her the toolkit that he stole from the American guy.
Oh yes.
And he's like, "Oh, I just like got this for you. Like, just like thought that maybe you'd like it."
Yeah.
And then he's just like, "What are you looking at?"
Yeah. They do it. Yeah,
good
Benny
stuff.
gets a number of those. Like Benny's first scene where he closes the door on Rick just immediately establishes him as a gutless piece of shit. And then,
your strength gives me strength. And then 2 seconds later, runs away.
the best one, and I think I'm jumping ahead, but I just got to talk about this scene. It's when Benny first runs into the mummy and he pulls out like the cross and starts praying to the ward, and then when it doesn't work, he like pulls out all these other religious symbols and he just starts going through the religions one by one until one of them works.
And after one of them, he even goes, he's like, "No." And just looks for the next one.
He's just prepared to pray to whatever he needs to get out of it. I fucking love that.
It just says exactly who he is as a character. Like,
it is good.
Zero loyalty, zero pride.
Yeah.
A perfect henchman character.
Yeah, and then it's like, the language of the slaves. I will have some use for you.
So yeah, they head to Egypt. The gang heads to Egypt. They find their way to Hamunaptra, the city of the dead. They're attacked by the Magi a few times for their troubles. These Magi are very bad at their job. They do not kill these people, and they fuck up, and the mummy is released soon.
Yeah, I forget the character's name, but the head of the Magi really drops the ball when it comes to Rick specifically. He has multiple opportunities to kill Rick throughout the years that they know each other and just always gives him another chance.
Yeah, I don't know why.
So we can't skip over the boat scene here because it's probably my favorite scene is where they are heading on the boat to Hamunaptra from Cairo. There's just so much good stuff in there. It's just, and then once the fire starts, every single line that Brendan Fraser says is hilarious. Like he's just throwing people off the boat. He's just fucking with everybody. When he's like to the warden, and he's like, "Oh my God, O'Connell, what are we going to do?" And he's like, "I'll go get help. You wait here." And he just jumps off, and then it just shows him dancing on the spot for a couple of seconds. And he's like, "Ah!" It's just so funny. And my favorite line ever, as Elliot knows, is the one where Benny across the river, and Benny's like, looks like I've got all the horses. And he's like, hey, Benny, looks like you're on the wrong side of the river. And I laugh
Every
so
time.
hard every time. I think that is
What is
so
it?
funny.
What is it about that line that gets you?
Honestly,
I don't know.
I
It's
thought that
just
was
hilarious.
that 100% is the most iconic line from the movie. I'm surprised it's not a meme format.
It's just, yeah, that would be a great meme format.
Mm.
I think it's just the whole thing between Rick and Benny
Yeah.
is just already hilarious.
Yes.
Like just when he's just like,
It's just Benny
see you,
getting
Benny,
dunked
and
on.
just throws him off the boat. It's just always so
Oh yeah,
funny.
that's right. Benny makes that joke, and then they're like, and he pretends to laugh, and then he just throws him off. Oh yeah. Also, yeah, like this is also the boats where we meet the other Americans. I love the other American group.
They are fucking.
They're such a great caricatures.
One of the early scenes with them is they're just kind of crouching behind some boxes, shooting their pistols, and John Hannah
Yeah.
looks at them and goes, "Oh, Americans!"
Yeah, Americans.
That was very funny.
And then they save his life, and he's like, "Yeah, great show."
Yeah, jolly good show, chaps.
I love the bit where they're talking about, there's like, oh, those damn Yankees or something. Oh, no offense. And then like, oh, those beastly Americans. Yeah, no offense. And he's like, yeah, none taken.
Yeah, but no, I love how the whole vibe is just the Americans are just like gung ho. They're always shooting their pistols. Like, yeah,
They're cowboys.
you used the term caricature before, and I think that's the perfect word for them. And it's so much fun.
Yeah.
I love that scene. Just the whole boat scene.
There's a fun
Very
scene
good.
where they have a horse v camel race, and the camels win. Which I don't know.
Oh,
is
yeah.
that accurate? I mean, maybe
It
it's
is,
accurate.
actually.
Maybe horses can't run that fast through the sand.
Yeah.
Camels are faster than horses, especially on sand.
Is that true?
It's a true fact. You can Google it right now. This
I'm-
would be something
I'm
Jenny would
going
include
to.
at the end of a pale in comparison episode.
Also, another fun fact: camels are extremely expensive.
Yeah,
What?
doesn't Australia export them?
I don't think we do because it is not very feasible. But like, there are a lot of feral camels in Australia that are, in theory, worth like a lot of money.
See, I
But
heard
the-
that Saudi Arabia imports camels.
I
from
mean, I'm
Australia.
sure we do, but like, as in, it's not as profitable as you'd think,
Yeah,
because the having to
Transport
ship a
and- yeah.
camel across the entire world is very difficult. But like, actually, they're worth like shitloads of money over in the Middle East. But we've just got heaps of them running feral.
I mean, they're really strong too. Like, there's that one camel at the end that's carrying Rick, Evie, and all the treasure. Meanwhile, the other camel's only carrying John Hannah.
Now, okay, fact
MVP,
check.
that camel.
Fact check. Call me Snopes. So horses are faster than camels, but in a sand environment, especially if they're laden with cargo, the camel will win. That's what I'm reading.
I'm sorry, that's
Yeah.
not the thing I heard from a friend of a friend when I was a kid.
Okay, well,
Wait, isn't that what we said? I thought horses were definitely faster than a camel, except just not on sand, right?
that's not what Elliot
I heard
said.
camels were
Elliot's-
faster, full stop. Yeah. No,
There's no
that
way a
is
camel outruns
untrue.
a horse. Haven't you ever seen a horse galloping?
I've never seen a
Reckon
camel.
You've never seen a camel ever.
No.
There's no way.
Wow.
You've been to Coffs Harbour. You've been to Port Macquarie. There's always camels at every like market and stuff there.
No.
This is
He
ridiculous.
closes his
You've never
eyes
seen a
for that.
camel. You've been to Dubbo Zoo. They've got camels at
Oh,
the zoo.
okay. No, yeah.
Come
So
on.
I
Zoo
saw
doesn't
one from
count.
like, yeah. I've never like properly seen a camel.
What's a proper camel? Like one that you would ride? Is that what you're saying? You've never
Well, yeah,
ridden a
one that
camel?
was right, or just like one that's just I don't know, not in a fucking zoo enclosure. Like,
I can't believe this. You've never
Anyway,
even
we should
seen
all
a
take
camel,
a-
let alone ridden one.
We should all
Riding
take a
them's
trip
quite
to
fun.
Egypt.
It's actually
so we
quite
can
hard.
see some camels. I would like to ride a camel.
going to Egypt has been on my bucket list since I was like 5 years old. I'm really mad that not only have I never done it, but I think both of my sisters have. I really need to get
No,
my
no,
shit
Hannah's
together.
never been to Egypt. I'm the only one who's been to Egypt.
Okay, I feel 50% better then.
Look, it was really cool, but I went on a Top Jet tour during the Civil War, and I had,
Yeah, political.
in many ways, the only good part about it was being physically inside the temples. All of the people I was with were awful, and
Yeah.
all of the Egyptian people, basically, I've met were awful. The guides were really good, though. Like, all the tour guides were exceptional.
Yeah, the political instability is what stopped me going when I probably would have.
And then the problem is that all the people in the tourist industry who probably were like very lovely were extremely unhappy and aggressive. So like, they'd be like, oh, hey, do you want to like buy this thing? And he'd be like, no, thanks. And then they'd just start verbally abusing you, like calling you a fucking bitch and stuff. And you're like, okay. It's like, I'm a uni student. I could barely afford to be here, let alone buy all of your shit. Yeah. I did buy Elliot a scarab beetle though.
Yeah, I've still got that.
Like a real life one that lives inside of his chest.
Oh, I'm very careful with it. I wouldn't want it. I wouldn't want it to break out.
It's slowly nibbling away his lungs as we speak. It actually controls most of his actions.
That explains a lot.
The Elliot you know and love is in fact a scarab beetle.
That's fun. That's a fun. That makes sense. It makes sense.
Yeah, that's a fun. That's a fun bit that we did here today.
It's explaining a lot about Elliot.
That's a fun bit, everybody. Yeah. The Magi fail to stop this gang from releasing the mummy. The Americans get a bunch of treasures, and the mummy starts its journey of reclaiming its body and the body parts of its beloved.
I take back what I said before. The most iconic line in this movie is actually "No harm ever came from reading a book."
Yeah.
I fucking love that line.
Yeah, so this part of the movie I think is my favorite bit from here until about 30 minutes later, where they're just they're dicking around in a tomb, and it's kind of more creepy horror in a tomb vibe, which is very fun. I love how scary the mummy is after they release it. I love how there's a scene where the American is blind, and then one of the Americans is blind and like walking around like a mummy, and then the mummy comes up on him and eats his eyes and his tongue, and it's delightful, even if the CGI maybe doesn't quite hold up.
And then when like Evie falls through that trapdoor, and then she's like, oh, thank God, Mr. Burns, like I was so scared I couldn't find anybody. And then he turns around and she's just like, wah! She's got no eyes and my tongue. It's terrifying.
There's a lot of genuinely horrifying deaths in this. Like,
oh yeah,
more so than the average movie. Again, maybe this is the fact that I watched it growing up, so like it stayed with me. But like the thought of death by scarab beetle honestly lives in my head rent free. Like that is terrifying.
For sure.
They are very scary.
Yeah, luckily I don't have to deal with that in real life. I did verify that when I was like 14 on Google, but also, like towards the end of the movie, I know I'm jumping ahead, but when when the city is sinking and all those like big wooden things are closing, and a bunch of people almost get crotched by the big stone blocks, terrifying.
Oh, and then Benny gets trapped
so close. They come so close to being squished. Like I was jumping out of my seat every time. They were moments away. Oh, really, it was good shit.
Hey, what would be worse? Like again, skipping sort of to the end here, but you know how Benny dies from scarab beetle, which we've just established.
I'd rather be crushed.
Oh, I was going to say, he's just if there weren't scarab beetles in there, he'd just be stuck in a dark room until he just wastes away, like across,
You're right. That's
weeks.
Worse.
I think that might be worse. At least the scarab is over relatively quickly.
Well, I mean, not necessarily. They took 10 years to eat Imhotep.
Okay, so I was really unclear on that, right? Because they had there's that one bit where they go when like Evie's just fallen into the trapdoor thing, and the Americans come running out because they're getting chased by scarab beetles, and then that one just like disposable Egyptian guy gets eaten, and they eat his flesh within like seconds. But then when they were in the sarcophaguses with the like priests, they for some reason ate him very slowly, and I was like, which is it?
Yeah,
that was a bit inconsistent.
I think it's a numbers game because I feel like there were like 6 in the coffin with Imhotep, but like
no, they pour like a whole big jar of them in.
There was that big jar.
I agree with
Maybe
you.
Not.
The headcanon I want to do is that they only put like 2 or 3 of them in with him, but they definitely poured at least 100 in there.
Because they were nearly spilling out, and I was saying to Elliot, like, oh my God, they have to get that lid on.
Yeah.
No, I think it's just maybe they could sense they were trapped, so they started dieting.
Yeah, maybe they thought guys were on rations. They're actually like quite intelligent.
I mean,
as we know.
I do all right.
Yeah, as we know from Elliot. Anyway. There's a bit where they find Imhotep's sarcophagus, and Evie is reading off the top, and she says, and she calls him "he that shall not be named." and Mum was in the room at the time. She goes, Voldemort? And I was just like, it's a great mum joke. It's like, you know how people always talk about dad jokes? That was a real mum joke.
Yeah.
It was really cute. I was like, oh, Mum.
It's right there. Nobody else felt the need to make it.
Yeah, it's like everybody knows the joke is there, but nobody's going to do it. But Mum was like, I have to say it. We used to call her Captain Obvious a lot, actually. It's very accurate. It was well deserved.
Yeah, it's a classic mom joke for sure. Can we talk about the fact that this movie is called The Mummy, but Imhotep is not a mummy? Like, explicitly, they talk about how they don't want to make him into a mummy. Like, that's a point in that they talk about it a few times. They intentionally didn't make him a mummy.
Well, the
So who is
titular
the
mummy
mummy?
is, in fact, that one that he, releases later on in the film.
Or is it
So
a Nux and a Moon?
Oh, yeah.
Because she
That's
was
better.
mummified.
She also was she mummified? I don't think she was mummified. She was just, I don't know.
Well, no,
no.
she definitely is in the scene where they're trying to swap her mind and body
I
with
don't
Rachel
think
Weisz.
she is. Is she? Or isn't she just like a kind of grotesque?
No, because she's
monster
wrapped in
vibe?
bandages.
Yeah,
she?
she's wrapped in bandages. Although it's
Okay.
confusing because now that I think back to the flashback from the start of the film, they steal her body from the crypt and he nearly brings her back right until the priests come to stop him. And it's just her regular body and she is not mummified.
No, they
So they
mummified
must
her
mummify
after
her
that.
after that.
Yeah.
But she's definitely wrapped up in bandages when she comes back at the end of the film. So she is the titular mummy. Hot take. You had to hear first, I guess.
Okay, I'll allow it.
Or do you think it was just a rewrite thing? Because probably maybe initially he was a mummy and then when they rewrote it for the 8th time or whatever.
They do say the Homdai is like a twisted form of mummification, but it is kind of, it stands out for not actually involving proper mummification. So this is I've never considered this before. That's a really good point.
But I mean, they must have, because they must have removed his organs because like.
No, he was alive.
Yeah, he's alive. When
Yeah,
you can't
that's
take
true.
someone's
bury him
brain out and
alive.
they're
So
still
then
alive.
why does he need to steal all of the organs?
You're a doctor, you should know
and
this.
and they've got the canopic jars
So
are
the canopic
involved.
jars
Because the
are
scarab
Anaxina
beetles
Moon's
ate
organs.
Uh.
The canopic jars are Anaxina Moon's organs, I think. His organs
are
are.
they?
I think so. His organs are just kind of eaten by scarabs, and they have a line of like each time he kills someone, he becomes closer and closer to his original form. So I think it's just kind of an unrelated thing.
He is very specifically eating the ones of the people who open that chest, which you're right. This always did confuse me, Georgia, is whose organs are in those canopic jars that they open.
Well, and also, so if one person opened the box by themselves, does he just have to absorb them?
What if nobody had opened
20
it yet?
people all opened it all together? Does he have to get all 20 of them?
I think so.
If they open it on live TV.
I think you have to be in the room because Benny runs out. He has full knowledge they're opening it and everything, but he just doesn't stick around and he's fine.
Yeah, but for all I know, their ancient magics consider being there as having visual contact. We don't know.
That's true.
But yeah,
Look,
I don't know.
We need to do more experiments on the mummy, I think.
I mean, yeah, the real question for me is what if nobody had opened it yet? Like, if Evie had read that thing and nobody had opened it, would he have gone and like picked it up and tried to make someone open it?
Oh, good point. Or would it have just meant did things just happen in whichever order? So she read that out, and then if somebody had then opened it 100 years later, he would have just been like instantly activated.
Yeah, maybe. We'll never know.
More experiments are required.
Yeah, let's do a few more home dies.
Have we lost Reuben again?
No, I'm here.
Oh, okay, good.
Just thinking about would I... Okay.
Thinking about the home die.
Here's the question. Would you go through the home die? Let's say you have to spend 5 years buried alive. You don't have to murder anybody to get your body back, but you do get plague powers.
I don't.
But why would
know-
I want
yeah.
plague powers? I'm not a psychopath. Like I have
don't
no
know.
use for these plague powers.
You would have sand control powers. You
Yeah,
could be like
no,
a
he does
Gaara
have-
from Naruto.
He does make his face in sand a lot, and I think that's a valuable skill to have.
Mhm. Haven't you ever looked at those things where you put your face in the needles and it makes a picture of your face out of needles and thought, I wish I could do that more without all the needles.
And with sand.
Yeah, and he can sand
no.
teleport. He can,
I mean, there's gotta
he can
be a way-
sand teleport other people. He teleports
Mm.
Benny and Rachel Weisz with sand. It's like sand magic. It's cool.
You could
Putting aside all the
like solve
locusts.
world hunger by making it all the frogs appear and everybody can eat
Yeah,
frogs.
and locusts.
Yeah,
You can
and
do kind of
locusts.
insect proteins.
Mm.
Plagues
Also,
of fire.
like
I'm sure that's good.
power. Yeah, well, you could power the world with not just the wind powers, but
Rivers
like
of blood.
yeah. Oh, fucking blood banks.
Yeah.
And you
The
can
vampires
turn,
of the world.
I'm sure you can somehow turn boils and sores into something useful. That was one that they kind of took a bit of poetic license with, wasn't it? Like boils and sores is not a great plague. But then they were like, oh,
And then they're
you
like,
can
they're
control
also
them.
inflamed. Yeah.
Honestly, even now, I'm constantly shocked every time I watch this movie with how little impact the plagues of Egypt really end up having on anything to do
Yes.
with the film.
My favorite
Like,
is that
it
the
rains
meteors, and that's just sort of in the background for 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Not even 10 seconds. It's like 2 seconds.
Like
Yeah.
he just kind of moves through all 10 plagues in about 2 scenes, and it's like, well, check them boxes. Done with this.
Yeah, it was sort of underused.
But yeah, like meteors, you could probably do something to power cities with meteors.
I mean, you could.
It's like solar power, but meteor power.
It's like nuclear power.
Yeah.
As well. Like you can just threaten your enemies to stop doing things that frustrate you. Or send a meteor shower.
Yeah, benevolent dictator mummy when.
Yeah. The problem is trying to make sure that how do you make sure you stay a benevolent dictator when you've got these really evil powers?
It's a good point.
I don't think
that's the
they're
question
most,
this movie raises, I think.
Yeah. In short, I'd have to say no. I'm going with a strong no.
Yeah, I don't think the
No.
Homdai is worth it.
No.
Okay. So is it the problem? What's the problem with it? Is it that you don't want plague powers?
Well, it's more like you have to go through these horrible torture. Would I go through horrible torture for some kind of very useful outcome? Yes. Do I think plague powers are particularly useful? No.
To be fair, we might actually be sleeping on his core stability is probably immortality, actually.
That's true. That is a
Do I want
traditional
immortality? No.
power.
Yeah, I do
I
think-
prefer the sand powers than the immortality, I think, if I had to pick.
I do. Yeah, I know. I don't buy all of this, left wing fiction propaganda about immortality being not okay. I reckon it'd be sweet. All these ennui, fairy, and vampires can eat my poop. I want to be immortal.
I think it's like living for a very long time has merit, but then not being able to end it ever is like a whole nother thing. Like literally being like when you get really sick of everybody, it's too bad.
Yeah, I'll just cut ties, move somewhere else, buy
What
a
if
new
every
video game
single
system.
other sentient being in the whole universe is dead or inaccessible to you and you're just there by yourself?
All right, plays.
What if you're like Benny at the end of the movie and you get stuck in the middle of the pyramid?
If you get like buried alive, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's where the sand powers come in.
Yeah, sand teleportation, easy.
Yeah, you just sand teleport. What if there's no sand in there?
Well, then
There's always sand. It's fine.
It's Egypt. There's sand
We're
everywhere.
in Egypt. What do you think? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just not leaving my desert.
So yeah, the mummy kills all
Yeah,
the
the
Americans.
sand powers become very useless the second you are not in Egypt or on the beach.
Oh, you know how there's
Yeah.
like that thing that like deserts slowly spread? Like they're actually doing stuff around the Sahara Desert
Desertification.
to stop it desertifying like the nearby forests and plains. You just you see
Promote that.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's like, people be like, I'm safe. I'm 100 meters away from the desert. You can't get me. It's like, oh, I'll come back in 200,000 years and you're toast.
Because I'm immortal. What about
I can
when
fucking wait.
the world is launched into a new ice age and everything is covered in ice?
Yeah, but there's still sand underneath. I'll just have I'll be subterranean for a few thousand years.
If you went to Mars, do your sand powers work on Martian sand?
Oh,
I don't
that's
see
a
why
good
not.
question.
I thought so.
I don't see why not, because the sand isn't.
Yeah, sand is sand, you know?
But it's
Are
the
you
texture. It's not
basically-
about like the silica, right?
Are you
It's-
basically an earthbender?
Yes.
See, but I think earthbenders can work on Mars because there's a meteor that lands in Avatar: The Last Airbender, and the earthbenders can earthbend it. So
Well, this is what I'm getting
yeah.
at. If you have sand powers, do you also have rock powers and metal powers? Like,
no, it's
where's
just
the
sand.
sand?
No,
It's
it's
to
just
do with
sand.
the-
It's about the
no.
texture of it.
but then
It's
what
the
is
texture.
sand?
As soon as it gets to pebble size, you're out.
So is
Yeah.
dirt included in sand?
Well, if it's soft, yes. Not like dense dirt, like not like
Yeah,
where it's
yeah,
So
protein
it's
yeah.
to do
clay.
with the texture of the dirt.
Yeah. No, that's what
Yeah.
my entire argument is that it's texture based.
No, I do agree. I think it's to do
So
with the
what about wet
granularity.
sand?
Yeah.
Wet sand is
It-
not
it-
soft.
No, he does do wet sand in the second one. So yeah.
Oh, there
Wet
you
sand
go.
is super soft.
So sorry. So wet sand, dry dirt, but not moist dirt.
Yeah.
For
Now
some
you're
reason.
getting it, Georgia.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't know
I
what's
don't
so
see why you
difficult to
find this so
understand.
difficult.
Anyway,
God,
let's
dense.
move on.
God.
So,
I
anywho,
hate this conversation.
the mummy kills all the Americans and takes Rachel Weisz to the city of the dead to be sacrificed to bring back his girlfriend. Yeah, good stuff. This is the one thing that I remembered from this movie is the scene where the mummy does the sandstorm with its face. That's the only image I remember.
Iconic.
Uh,
He loves putting his face in sand.
what about glass? Does he have glass powers?
No, it's the texture, for fuck's sake. You can't say you hate this conversation, then bring it back up, Georgia. Like,
I just realized I had one last question. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's fine.
if you shatter the glass into tiny pieces, then maybe.
You can just see my face ticking on. I'm trying to think of the next question. Like, what if you had?
I can do this all day.
What if you had glass that's been like ground up, and so it is now like all fragmented?
Yeah,
Then I think
that's sandy.
So that's sandy.
Now, here's the
Okay.
real
Would you go to a
question,
beach
Elliot.
covered in finely
So-
cut up
so
glass?
it's
Yes.
So it's not sand powers; it's sandy powers. Like,
So
Sand is a texture. I don't care.
no, it is not.
I don't care about all these geologists. Don't fucking at me. Sand is a texture. It's a state of being.
Elliot. Okay, what about this one? You take a chocolate chip cookie and you put it in a little Ziploc bag and you crush it up until it's just kind of cookie crumbs and bits of chocolate chip. Could the mummy control that?
That's a trick question because it's irresponsible of him not to eat a chocolate chip cookie. So it doesn't matter whether he can control it unless he's controlling it into his mouth, which he could
The cookie
do.
monster has already been through and devoured most of the cookies, and there's just crumbs left.
Yes, that's totally sand.
Like when you're making the base for a cheesecake, and you've got
Yeah.
blend,
Yeah.
like that. Okay, so the mummy has control over that.
Yeah.
Now the power's getting
That's
more
sand.
useful.
Yeah, no, now you can
I don't know.
make an
Yeah,
easy
sand
base
is
for a
just little
cheesecake.
bits.
I mean, it's not though. This is why we have to clarify this. Is because your idea of what sand is so
No,
wrong.
that's sand.
No, it's not.
Sand is little bits. And it has to be like of the earth, I think. Like it can't just be like
So he can't control the
little
cookie.
bits. Like if you had lots of little beads of water, that's out. No, like
That's obviously
and like too
yeah.
refined metal, that's out. It's got to be. It's got to be. Of
So
earth.
so snow, which is essentially
No,
the
no,
water
no.
version
No,
of
no, no,
sand. Okay, so this is really
That's
inconsistent.
stupid.
So he can control cookies, but not snow.
Yeah, because cookies are of the earth.
I know they're not.
This is so ridiculous. Cookies
Yes,
of
because
the earth.
because you see, wheat gets nutrients from the
Where
earth.
does wheat come from exactly?
As opposed to, we all know that there's no water in the earth.
No, it's in the ocean. Oh my god.
Okay. Anyway.
Can we
So,
how much longer are we going to do this? I can do
Brendan
this all day,
Fraser-
but I don't want to.
Brendan Fraser follows, everyone back to Hamunaptra. They have to fight their way through some actual mummies, making an appearance in the movie, which is good, to try and rescue Evelyn, which, is fine.
They I feel offended that you've skipped over who might be my favorite character, which is Winston the pilot.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
It's
I
just-
forgot about him.
It's just this drunk old pilot dude who wants to die in a plane fight. And he gets his wish, and it's kind of sad, but also funny, which is a weird line to walk, but they somehow pull it off
Yeah,
for me.
because when this is set is sort of post World War One, so you just get that vibe that he was like a pilot in World War One, and all his friends maybe died, and he was the only one who survived. And he's got all this survivor's guilt, so it's like super dark, but he's so funny at the same time.
The funny bit is when he's like, "What is the mission?" and it's like, "It's very dangerous, and you probably die." And he's like, "Oh gosh, do you really think so?"
Yeah, he's like really excited.
Here's a
What does
funny
this have to do with
character.
Her Majesty's Royal Air Force? Nothing. Oh.
And then he dies with a smile on his face.
Yeah,
Mm.
it's tragic, but
It's actually really
Yeah.
sad. Well, I think as well growing up, I thought it was sadder than it is. Like now that I'm older and I realize he kind of wanted to die, I'm
That's
like
exactly what he
Yeah.
wanted.
less
It went
sad.
all according
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
But as a
plan
kid,
for
I
him.
thought it was this big tragedy. Like I hadn't picked up on the whole suicidal
Yeah.
aspect.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
And yeah, I love these mummies that you mentioned in like because we start out with the really shit like stumbling mummies, and it's kind of like now that they've checked that box, we get the cool ones that Jonathan unleashes, like the actual soldier ones who do that thing where they crawl along the walls. I fucking love that.
Mm. And they've got the cool like swords.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what you call those, like the scythe looking
Like
things.
curved sword.
Yeah.
Maybe just curved sword. Maybe it's not a scythe.
Well, at the end bit, it is sort of. They're definitely not
It's
scythes,
the
but that's the
definition
closest.
of a scythe. Yeah.
It's definitely not a scythe, but that's the only way I can think to describe that sort of blade.
Mm.
Anyway, yeah, cool beans.
So yeah, they find the golden book of Amon-Ra. They use it to free Evelyn. They kill Imhotep. You know, from this point on, I was kind of losing attention in the movie, I gotta say.
I do agree. The part of the movie that I always remember the least and pay the least attention to is the bit between when they get the book of Amon-Ra and when they actually start, like when they get back to the basement of Hamunaptra. Yeah, I don't know. Like the whole scene with like all the weird zombies and stuff. I don't know. That's just the part I've never really. That's fine, but it's the part.
It's fine. I don't know.
So we get up to go to the bathroom or grab a snack.
Yeah.
I really do think my favorite part of this is the bits where it's like kind of almost like a haunted house vibe of them creeping around like the traps in the pyramid. And when it gets away from that, I felt myself losing attention pretty quickly.
Mm.
Yeah, exactly. The return to Cairo part, I think it starts out quite strong when we're getting drowned in plagues and when they're all figuring out what to do. And then when it kind of turns into, the race to find where the book is and they're dealing with all the zombies. That's just sort of the part where I'm like, and even all the stuff. I love Winston, but yeah, all the plane stuff. It's really when they get back to the basement and the ritual started and we're drowning in all these other mummies and the action picks up. That's when I get back into it.
Yeah. No, totally agree.
Mm. Yeah. But yeah, so they kill Imhotep. They flee the Hamunaptra as it collapses. Brendan and Rachel finally kiss, and all the white characters live happily ever after with all the treasure that they've stolen from these uncivilized lands.
You forgot the bit where Benny dies. Horrible death. Who, by the way, Elliot and I both only realised today with the subtitles that Benny is Hungarian.
Yeah, that's a fun fact for you.
Yeah. I don't
There
know
you
where
go.
I thought he was. I never really thought about
I always
where he
assumed
was
he was
from.
Egyptian.
He's like white as.
He wears a fez.
I suppose
no,
in
that's
this
like-
movie arguing that somebody
Yes.
is too white to be Egyptian doesn't hold up. Yeah.
As a kid, he wore a fez. That sort of was it for me. And
It's not
I'd
a
never.
fez. It's like almost like a beret more than a fez, isn't it?
No, at one point, there's one point where he's definitely wearing a fez. Anyway,
He doesn't wear a fez.
not for most of it. Anyway, yeah, so okay, the thing with Benny, right, is that because he's the one he flicks the switch that causes this whole city to collapse on itself, and it's like the fucking timing on that. If he'd done that 10 minutes earlier, like would Imhotep have been able to get out? I suppose he has his sand powers, but like it just every time I watch this movie, I'm like, oh Benny, don't do it.
Yeah, he gets himself killed pretty solidly.
You know
Yeah.
what we haven't talked about is how Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz's characters both like, tell him like when he's like, you're gonna get yours in the end, Benny, and he's like, oh yeah, like I've never heard that before. And then like Rachel Weisz is like, little like nasty men like you always get their comeuppance. And he's like, huh, always? And she's like, yes, always. And he sort of looks a bit nervous. And then he gets his comeuppance in the end. I actually quite like the foreshadowing.
He's such a funny character. Like he actually genuinely listened to her and took what she said on board, which
Yeah.
is like ridiculous that he did that.
He wears this beret for the whole film.
Yeah.
I'm showing Elliot a picture of the beret. That's
I
a
would
beret.
call,
It's
I
not
would
a
call that a
fez.
fez. Yeah,
You don't know what a fez is either. You don't know what a camel or a fez.
I know what a fez
honestly.
is because the other Egyptian expert that the Americans also has a fez
This is a fez. Okay, fez are often the same color as Benny's beret, but it's a totally
and the
different
same
hat.
general shape.
No, simply no. This is not. No.
Okay, send these pictures to our chat with Reuben and he can adjudicate.
Yeah,
Okay.
show us. Let's see it.
I'm willing to admit that it isn't a fez. I'm not claiming it is a fez. I just want to know that it's fair for me to have assumed it was a type of fez.
I will adjudicate when I see the picture. I hold judgment. So far, Georgia has just messaged saying this is a fez, and then a picture of a fez. Yes, I can confirm that is a fez.
That's a weird picture of a fez. Is that one? It's photoshopped on.
It does look photoshopped.
It is
but
too.
it's classic.
The
Matt
point I'm
Smith
trying to make there
fez.
is how the way that it
yes.
sits up off the head. Like a
No,
fez
you're
is like a
right.
hard hat.
He is just wearing a kind of big beret. It's not.
It's
And
halfway
it's-
between a beret and a fez.
Yeah, no, it's bigger than I would normally see in a beret.
I'm
I
going
can
to look
understand
up
the
Benny's
confusion.
character on Wikipedia. Very
No.
What's like Rick and
Wikipedia?
Morty?
good.
Is that-
Wikipedia. Mm.
What is?
He
he
is-
fuck, like Rick
Oh!
O'Connell. I
Oh,
get it.
guys, get this. So it is a beret because Benny is a member of the French Foreign Legion.
Oh, no. Yeah, because
Oh.
well, they both are. That was the French
Mm.
Foreign Legion they were with.
Oh,
I did not
that's
realise
what they
that.
were.
So it's a beret.
There you go.
Yeah, but I like it's a very fez-like beret. I'm not going to back down from this.
Do you want to hear why Benny had to flee Hungary?
Oh yeah,
He was wanted for robbing a synagogue.
classic Benny.
Where does that come from? Oh, that's in the Mummy
I have
novel.
no idea.
Okay.
I think these are based off novels, aren't they? Yeah.
I don't think they
Wild.
were that closely
That's
based on the
so
novel,
funny.
though. There's got to be like I bet you this feels like one of those movie franchises that has like a limited run of spin-off comics.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's just got that vibe.
Mm.
It definitely does. Wow.
There's going to be
Anyway.
a bit that talks about Benny's attire. Anyway, I'll keep looking at that while you guys.
Well, that's kind of the end of the movie. They go out, they get some treasure. Turns
Yeah.
out the Medjay leader survived. I guess they wanted him in the sequel. So, cool. The movie's over.
Yeah, as you said, all the white people leave with the treasures from this land, which
Yeah, a happy
Again,
ending.
it's just one of those things I'd never thought about, and I kind of hate that. Like my favorite movie of all time is like this.
Okay, guys, it's. I can never be accused of being dishonest. This is the description of Benny. It says, Benny took to wearing a dark set of pajama-like garments with suspenders, sandals, a worn-out neckcloth, sand brown belt, and a red felt fez.
Oh my
Vindication!
god! There you go.
I
What
eat
a
humble
twist.
pie.
First, I was right about sand. Then I was right about
Hmm.
this,
Hmm.
and the horses, and also the horses. I'm just
And
on
the
a roll
horses.
tonight.
You're a genius, Elliot.
I'm the smartest
Um,
scarab beetle this side of.
So anyway,
Man.
So,
Oh,
I'm
you know
so
which,
excited to watch The Mummy Returns next month. I've really struggled to talk about this movie without talking about the sequel because they're so intertwined in my head. I always watch one immediately after the other. Well, actually, traditionally, The Mummy Returns after The Mummy. It's a very set order that I do it in. But because you said you haven't seen it, Reuben.
no, I don't think I've seen any further Mummy films.
I'm so excited for this. Honestly, they're such a pair, and I think the second one's actually better. It's been really hard not to
Yeah.
bring up stuff from The Mummy Returns a lot.
Yeah, The Mummy Returns is very good.
Is
And there's so many
gonna be
callbacks.
good?
Like I think that's the thing. I think like you got to keep your eye out for like callbacks to this film. They're everywhere. It's so good.
Okay.
I like the
All
child
right.
actor too.
Yeah.
I think he's good.
We'll get there.
Wait, the child actor. Does this go into the past? This next film.
You'll see.
You'll see.
All right, and I guess with that, we'll wrap up this episode.
But Dwayne the Rock Johnson is.
I think Reuben knows about that. Yeah.
Yes, because doesn't he
Okay,
go
good.
on to have his own series of films?
Yeah, he does. Which I would like to toss around the idea of actually covering at least one of those because I've never seen any of them, and I want to see how bad they are. I know
You've
they're going
never
to be
seen.
bad.
You haven't seen the Scorpion King movie.
No.
Well then, I'm not going to pretend like I'm super familiar with it, but I've definitely seen it.
No, all I've seen is The Mummy, and The Mummy Returns a billion times each. And then I saw The Mummy 3 once, and I kind of quit the rest of the franchise after that.
Yeah, fair enough.
I never saw Tom Cruise and his Abomination.
Yeah, so that's the Mummy, I guess. Thanks everyone for being patrons. If you're patrons, if you're not patrons, that thank's not for you, so don't take it.
Yeah, our patrons are really like this planet's Bembridge scholars, I'd say.
Yes. And I guess, as we say every time, bye hoy,
Bye
hoy,
listeners, and get out of our swamp.
And
Flawless.
nothing, no harm ever came from reading a book.